Welcome, everyone. First, I want to thank Rabbi Herman and everybody here at the JEC, Jewish Educational Center in Elizabeth, New Jersey. Those of you who are watching online can see I'm wearing long sleeves today. Not in Florida. We're here in New Jersey where it's a little bit chillier. We're in New Jersey for Thanksgiving, and we wanted to continue the class, so we're doing it from New Jersey live and continuing with the same situation. So tonight begins Rosh Chodesh Kislev, and if you're interested in Torah Shabbat Peh, which is what we're talking about, the oral law, Kislev is an important month because there's a very significant event that took place in Kislev, which led to a very important holiday. What's the holiday that's in Kislev? Anybody know? Hanukkah, right? Hanukkah happens, and Hanukkah is a holiday that happened after the Torah was completed, and it was established by the rabbis, really. So, same with Purim. Purim and Hanukkah are holidays that were established after the end of the Torah, after there was no longer any prophecy, and they represented a change. Actually, it's a big change in the way that Jewish people interacted with Hashem, actually. Because prior to Purim, let's say, there was always prophecy, there were Nevi'im, there were open miracles. After that, that didn't happen. In fact, in the Megillah, God's name is never mentioned at all. And yet, the salvation of the people comes, and we know that it came from God, and we celebrate that. But still in all, it's a different relationship. And we don't have, there's no prophecy in the Megillah, there's no prophecy connected with Hanukkah. What's happening is that the people themselves are sort of meeting God, because up until then, how does prophecy work? You don't decide that you're going to, I mean, maybe Moshe Rabbeinu, but all the other prophets basically had to wait to hear from God. So they were sort of passive receivers of the religion, but when the rabbis sort of took over, when prophecy ended, and when the oral law, or the Torah Shabbat Peh became prominent, so now the rabbis were the actors, the ones who were basically spreading the religion, and it involved a different kind of relationship, because now it was available to everybody. So what we're doing here tonight, and what Jews around the world are doing, learning the oral law, so we're sort of going in the direction of God. We're not waiting to be contacted passively. We are active participants. And the Talmud, the Gemara, is alive, right? It's not something, as we said before, that was studied or practiced by the ancient Hebrews. This is something that we're doing right now. It's alive. And if one of you has a comment to make that is a new insight, you have a right to make that. You can change the Talmud. You can actually help the Talmud to grow. And Rabbi Steinsaltz says that the study of the Talmud is what sustains Jewish communities. So what we're doing right now is we are sustaining the community of Elizabeth, New Jersey, by the fact that we're learning Gemara here together. So it's a pretty big responsibility, and it's an important thing that we are doing. So it's a living Torah, and we are the ones who are creating it. So another thing that I've thought about a little bit is that we talk about Purim, we talk about Hanukkah, and the fact that they were miraculous events, and yet there's no revelation that God is actually doing it. It seems everything is acting in a natural way. Maybe we could think the same way about the establishment of the State of Israel, because when you think about the fact that the Jews were outnumbered and the Arabs were prepared to immediately attack, and if you ever seen the equipment that the Jews had, the Israelis had in the beginning, there was no way that they could have won, and yet they fought off the Arabs. So it's a question how these holidays get established. You know, there's some people now, most Jews, I suppose, today celebrate Yom HaAtzmaut and Yom Yerushalayim, and people are saying Hallel and so on. But how these holidays actually get accepted over time, that's a process that we don't really know how it works. But it could be that we're in the middle of that right now, and maybe at some point, maybe, you know, Eitan in your time or Ezra, then these holidays will become holidays. Maybe what they're missing is they need a food of some kind, because comes Purim, we know everybody's eating hamantashen, you have a Purim Suda, comes Hanukkah, so we know it's latkes and it's donuts. So maybe, you know, maybe we need to...
Blue and white cookies.
Cookies, that's blue and white cookies.
That's
blue
what they serve here. Blue
there
and
you
white
go.
Cookies.
Blue and white cookies could be the food.
Right.
Or maybe it could be shawarma or falafel. And maybe when that food gets connected with the holiday, of course I'm kidding, but maybe somehow or other the holiday itself could take on that more or less a permanent and in a way a holy aspect. So okay, so to get to the Gemara that we're working on, what we've been talking about the last few weeks is how neighbors need to get along with each other. And we've gone through many different cases. So we had the case where a neighbor has a field and his field is surrounded by his neighbor, and then one side decides to build a fence, and what happens there? Or when you have a situation where there are partners and what their requirements are. So today's case, we're going to talk about a situation where you have a wall that is separating the properties of two neighbors, and now what happens? That wall fell down. The wall fell down, and so let's say Terry and Eitan are neighbors, and they have a fence, right? Because in our language we say good fences make good neighbors, but in the time of the Torah they had what was called, or they had the term called hezek re'iyah, which means the damage caused by seeing. In other words, you wanted your privacy. The privacy rights were respected by the rabbis in the Gemara thousands of years ago. So you didn't want your neighbor looking in and seeing what's going on in your backyard or your house or whatever. So there had to be a wall. It was recommended that you put a wall separating the two properties. The wall had to be a certain height. The standard height was 4 amos, which is about 6 feet, 6 to 8 feet. Whether an amma is 18 inches or 24 inches. If it's 18 inches, so that wall will be 6 feet high. If it's 24, so it'll be 8 feet high. But anyway, that was the standard 8 feet, 4 amos rather, and that was the size that would prevent one neighbor from seeing into the property of the other neighbor. So now, you have this wall separating the two properties, and the wall fell down. For whatever reason, whether it could have been a fire, could have been an earthquake, could have been a flood. So whatever reason it happened, the wall fell down, and now Terry went right out and rebuilt the wall. Terry rebuilt the wall, and then he comes to Eitan and he says to Eitan, hey, this wall was separating our properties. I rebuilt it. You need to pay me for half of the expenses that I laid out money. The wall serves a purpose for both of us, and you need to pay me. So then we get into all kinds of situations where Eitan says, you know, I don't. Who asked you? I didn't ask you to do it. Or who asked you to spend so much money on such a fancy wall? I could have done something cheaper. And they go back and forth. So starting where we are today, you have a flag. It's probably a pink one in the Hebrew, in the Gemara. And then you have corresponding the English too, so you can follow along in the English if that's more comfortable to you. So the first part is a quotation from our Mishnah, and the Mishnah says, "Samach lo kosel acher, megalgalin alav es hakol." So what happened? Eitan said to Terry, "Listen, Terry, I don't need the wall, and I'm not going to be out in the backyard. My wife is not going to be sunbathing out there. I don't really care whether you have a wall there or not. You laid out the money, that's too bad about you." But then suppose what Eitan did was, he took a look at Terry's wall right here, and he built another one right alongside of it. He built a wall right alongside of Terry's wall. So why did he do it? Because he was going to use these two walls. He's going to put a roof across and make a room out of it. So now the Mishnah says that if Eitan goes ahead and he builds a second wall, he demonstrates, what is he showing?
He needs the first wall.
He wants the first wall. He needs that first wall. So what the Mishnah says to do is megalgan alav es hakol. We now can go back to him. We roll the whole payment. We make him pay for half of Terry's expenses too, because he's shown us that he wants that wall, right? Before then we didn't know, but he demonstrated by his actions. So Amar Rav Huna, samach lefalga, samach lekula. So now suppose what Eitan did was, instead of building a full wall like this, he went ahead and he built it halfway. And by the way, these drawings were done by Mendel based on diagrams in the Steinsaltz Gemara. And so here's Terry's wall, right? Full length of the property. So let's say the property, he's got a 100-foot property line, whatever. And Eitan built the wall halfway. He didn't build the whole thing, he only built it halfway. So what do you think has to happen now?
Pay for that section.
Pay for half?
Pay for that section.
What do you think is?
What's he gonna do with it?
Should pay for a quarter.
A quarter.
Whatever that section is.
Okay. So here, Amar Rav Huna says, samach lepalga, samach lekula. He said, if he built it part way, we can charge him for the whole thing.
Oh.
Because he's showing he wants this wall.
What's the point of a
So,
section?
Rav Nachman Amar, Rav Nachman disagrees with him. So Rav Nachman doesn't go with a quarter, but he goes with Eitan. He says, Lamaida samach samach. The amount of wall that he put next to it, that you can charge him for. So Lamaida lo samach. So where he didn't, this part, he didn't. So I mean, this picture might look like a quarter, but this is a half. It's not exactly the scale.
Yeah, but if you needed to pay for half,
Right.
if you made the whole wall,
Oh, right.
so
You're
then
halfway.
he only used half the wall, he
Right.
should pay for a quarter of it.
Exactly, right, okay, so we're agreeing. So basically what it amounts to is that he's using half of the wall, according to.
So he has to pay for half of that?
He pays half of the half. He pays Terry for half. So Rav Huna says he pays Terry for half of the entire wall, and Rav Nachman said what he uses, that's what he pays.
So you're right, it's a quarter.
Yeah.
A quarter.
So it's a quarter.
You're right.
So if it's half, it's a quarter. So and Rav Huna bekarna v'lufta. So Rav Huna basically says that he's going to have to pay for the whole thing, and it depends also whether it's going to be for height or for the length. So it could be this way, or it could be this way, right? Halfway in half height, not just half length.
How would you use that?
Pardon?
Slope proof.
Oh, so we're going to get to
it
this. We're going to.
A slope proof?
Oh.
Slope proof,
Let's say you wanted to
or
make a
he's
greenhouse.
showing, by starting to build already, he's showing what his intention is. And we're gonna get to
Sounds
an
like a really
example.
shady character, not very honest.
Right. So, and then the motor of Nachman, Baprizo, Babaka, Ube, Kavata, the Kashure. So what other possibilities are there? What he could do is he could take his low wall and he could put beams across, connecting out to Terry's wall, indicating that he's intending to go higher. Because there's two issues here. First of all, there's the issue of the whole wall itself. The second issue is, suppose Terry built that wall, instead of 4 amos high, he built it 6 amos high. Right? So if there is no construction by Eitan at all, so Terry has a right to go to Eitan and say to him, listen, Eitan, you need to pay me half of what I laid out for the wall. And Eitan can say, well, okay, I agree with you, but I'm only going to pay you what's the standard height. You went and built it higher than that, that's on you. So the standard amount, the standard wall is 4 amos high, so I'm going to pay you for 4 amos high. So let's suppose Terry went ahead and he built it 6 amos high. And now what Eitan did is he put beams across, indicating he intends to build a second story. So even though his wall is only 4 amos, he's got these beams here ready to go. Now Terry can say to him, hey, you're demonstrating that you intend to use that height. Or what he could have done is, instead of putting the beams, he could have made holes in his wall to accept those beams. So he didn't put the beams there yet, but he's showing, what's he showing, Ezra?
That he's allowing it.
He's intending to use it.
He wants to.
He wants it, that's right. So if he wants it, he can't say, you spent the money and it's your tough luck. Right? Okay. So Amar Rav Huna, Beikadi lo hava chazaka. So Rav Huna says, just making those holes, that does not necessarily indicate that he's intending to build a wall, because afagav avalehi malti. So let's say Terry built a wall with holes in it, not Eitan, and now he's amarle amina lechi paisasli lo lisrel ashisai. So Terry says that I'm going to build the wall. Eitan's been giving me a hard time about paying, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to prepare it, because in case we finally can come to some agreement, I'll have the holes ready to accept his beams. So in that case, you can go back to Eitan and say, hey, come on, you're indicating you're intending to use this wall, and you need to come along and pay your share. Amar Rav Nachman, aksik lehurde lo aksik lehshuri. So there's different qualities of beams, or different types of beams, right? So if you've ever built anything, you can use 2x4s or 2x6 or 2x12s, right? And so if you're building something with 2x4s for the roof structure, it's gonna support very lightweight, right? 2x12s, you can build a second story above it. So he's saying that if you built it in order to he made these holes for small, thin beams, you can't require him to pay if he's going for thick beams. Or l'kshure aksik l'hurdi, or he made thick ones for thin ones. Rav Yosef Omer aksik l'hurdi aksik l'kshuri. He says, no, if he made the holes big enough to hold big beams, then you can make him pay if he used only the thin beams.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
The whole premise here doesn't make any sense, in my opinion,
Okay,
because if you built a wall between two properties and you don't ask your neighbor ahead of time
Right.
whether he wants to participate in the cost, then you don't have a leg to stand on. If he doesn't want to pay for it, he doesn't have to pay for it. And the same thing with the holes.
Almost every week, I'm glad you did it. Almost every week, a lady gets up and says,
I
"Hey,
don't like it.
women
It
would
doesn't
never,
make sense.
women would never have this problem because they would work it out."
Why
in
would a
their
man
days.
put a wall there and then say to his neighbor, "You owe me 50% of the cost"?
Well, you've got to ask Terry. Why was he in such a rush, right? He should have done what his wife would have done, which is go over to Eitan and say, "Come on, we have to work this out together." But he didn't. He went ahead and he built it, and
What's so funny?
and Terry has the right. Terry has the right to have privacy, and Eitan is sort of obligated to provide privacy, but he can't force him. He can't force him because Eitan says, "I don't need it." And so in previous weeks, we've gone through different cases where the neighbor who did not build the fence says, "I don't need the fence," and they got into what's it all about. And one of the cases was that they had crops growing, and they were concerned at harvest time, the few days when the crop was ready to be harvested, that animals shouldn't go in or whatever. So only for that short period of time, he was willing to pay. And he wasn't even willing to pay for a wall. He would pay for maybe a watchman to sit there and watch for a couple of nights. So you're right. I mean, it's a mistake on the part of the person who did the building not to try. So what the Gemara is saying is that we cannot compel him to pay if he does do some action. If he takes an action himself, now Terry's justified to take Eitan to court and say, "Come on, Eitan, you obviously do want this wall, and you're probably planning to make use of this wall because you built your wall right next to it. And therefore," and in that case, the rabbis are going to agree with Terry, and they're going to say, "Hey, Eitan, they may not require him to pay for the value of the wall that Terry built, because Terry could have built a brick wall, a stone wall, and Eitan could have said a snow fence will serve the purpose, and I don't need that kind of heavy duty construction." And he might have a point.
What's a snow fence?
A snow fence. If you ride along on the Garden State Parkway, sometimes they'll have just like thin slats of wood put together with like chicken wire.
But is it provide privacy? Wasn't that the whole idea? Privacy?
Maybe not. So let's say a fence made out of thin reeds or something, kind of tied together. So it would provide privacy, but it's not gonna last very long, it's not gonna be a strong wall. So Terry wants to have a strong wall to last a long time, and Eitan says, well, you know, the rabbis say I have to pay, I'm willing to pay for a privacy fence. Basically, just some kind of a thin wooden reed fence. You okay now?
You know, every week, the men seem totally unfazed by this. It just starts, there's a problem. The women all say, well, why did they create a problem to start with? And the father is laughing because it's funny that.
Because you should discuss it ahead of time.
Because the men never seem upset by the fact that somebody didn't think ahead. And the point is, it already was a problem. So now how do you solve it? You know, so it sort of starts with, there's a problem, yeah, but you have to solve it. So I think that's what it does.
Yeah, all these cases really, if it had been worked out in advance, there's nothing to talk about. Well, it's only in cases where it had not been discussed. So previous cases we're talking about where there was no witnesses to a loan that was being made. And now the person who lent the money wants to collect it. And so there, you know, if you took the time to do it right, get it in writing, right, everything. So then, but you know, that these cases are cases where neighbors having disputes, and the rabbis. And by the way, these laws, the Masechta that we're learning, Bava Basra, is basically civil law, and it's there's going to be very few scriptural references in it. So when you learn, most Gemaras are going to have a lot of psukim. You know, if you're talking about sacrifices, or you're talking about how to build a sukkah, or other things, you're going to have a lot of psukim about it. But in this, it's mostly common sense, really. It's common sense, it's tradition. And the rabbis settle these disputes by appealing to people's common sense. So, in terms of the question, there's no such thing as not a good question, because we're after the truth here. So every question is a good one, and you know, now that I've heard 3 or 4 weeks in a row ladies saying this, I'm going to be more careful myself when it comes to doing business together with somebody else. Make sure you get everything.
With another man.
With another man, right? Get it straight, get it clear in advance, and you save yourself a lot of aggravation. So next case. Let's say you have neighbors, and one person's house. Now, if you're familiar with the way that the houses are built in Israel, so they're not so much today, but some sections of Yerushalayim, you go, the houses are built on a central courtyard, and then the houses surround the courtyard, or you'll have one person's house right next to the courtyard of his neighbor. And so you have a situation where rainwater is falling on one neighbor's house, and the rainwater runs off onto the courtyard of the neighbor. Okay? So it could be good and it could be bad. Maybe he wants to collect the water if he needs it, or maybe it's a nuisance to him that he's got water there. But the point is that if you have a situation where something has been going on for a period of time, and you did not protest about it, you can't complain. In other words, if you have a situation where here, he says, Amar of Nachman, Achazik l'hurdei, we got that one, l'kshurei, achzik l'hurdei, Amar of Nachman, achzik l'natfei, achzik l'shaftei. So suppose I have water on my roof, and it's running off the roof into Susan's backyard, or front yard, whatever it is. And it's been going on for a while. And she never made an issue about it. So now, if I decide, instead of having just run off the roof, I want to put a pipe there and have the water run off through a downspout onto a pipe. So since I've been doing it this way for a long time, and the water's running onto her property, she hasn't complained about it, I have the right to go ahead and direct that flow of water. Because she never complained before, and they have what's called a chazaka, which is like a presumption that it's been happening. It's like, you know, if kids run through your backyard and you never stop them, eventually you can't stop them, because they're going to take a shortcut, and people have gotten used to that, and so that's a similar situation. So if you have it where the water is running off, and now you want to put a pipe there, So Rav Nachman says it works, you can. But he's aksig l'shavche, lo aksig l'nafek. But if you had a pipe originally, it doesn't work in terms of just letting the water run off. For Rav Yosef Omar, Rav Yosef says either way. He's afilu aksig l'shavche, aksig l'nafek. Either way, if the water's been coming off of your roof, whether in a pipe, in a downspout, or just running off the roof, if it's been working that way, you have to let it continue that way. Aval l'tzrifa de urbanei lo. But not if you have like a thatched roof where the water just runs off and there's no direction to it. That you can't just assume that you can do that, because that's a problem for your neighbor. So in that case, that's not going to work. Rav Yosef Amar, afilu tzrifa d'orbanei. Rav Yosef says he's even this kind of thatched roof situation where the water's running off, it's not a problem, because it's been happening for a while and you never complained about it before, so you can't complain now. So these are laws that they're common sense laws, and the Gemara, after all, is a couple thousand years old, but they have practical application. My brother bought a house in Israel, in Yerushalayim, in the section called Chatamon, and a few days before Rosh Hashanah, his neighbor put pegs in the wall of the outside of Jerry's house, and he hung dry clean clothing on it. It was a dry cleaning business, and on Rosh Hashanah, before Rosh Hashanah, everybody's getting their clothes clean, and he didn't have room in the shop to hang all the clothes for the customers. So Jerry comes out of the house one day, and he sees all this stuff hanging on the side of his wall. So Jerry said, what's going on here? He said, I do it all the time. So my brother said, that's over. I'm not going to do it anymore. So the question is, was Jerry right? I mean, he did it, and the neighbor had nothing. He couldn't do anything about it. My brother was not going to let him hang the clothing there. But he said he'd been doing it for years that way. So the only thing is, maybe he'd been doing it for years, but it was interrupted. It was only a certain time of the year.
You mean he was a new owner?
My brother was the new owner. And the previous owner apparently allowed this dry cleaner to hang the clothing on the wall of his
Only
house.
Rosh Hashanah time, no other time of the year?
Apparently not. Apparently Rosh
I would
Hashanah
have,
time.
But a new
Would've let it
owner,
go.
I feel like that makes a break in
Yeah.
what happened,
It's a new
what he
chazaka.
was doing,
It's
because
like, this is the first time that Jerry?
Sure.
This is the first time that Jerry saw it, and there's no chazaka. This is the first time Jerry ever had it. There's no
only
repeating
for the
pattern.
other guy, but not for Jerry.
It's not on the property, it's on that person, right? Because it's what the person would allow.
Not exactly. When you buy a property, you're going to buy it with all the rights that the previous owner had. And if at a certain time of the year that somebody had a right to use that property, that's all you don't own any more than the previous owner owned. So he had that situation. So I'm not sure that my brother did the right thing, because this person had been doing it before. But I don't know if there was any proof of it or a dispute about it. But that's a modern day application of this kind of.
What happens if there's an easement? You have a property, you sell it, and while you owned it, all the neighbors came through, as is commonly done.
Right.
And you put up with it. You just let
Right.
it be. So now, new owner comes in, and he's not happy with that easement. What happens? I mean, even here.
Exactly. So there you go. So if you have a situation, what happens is the easement continues.
Oh.
The easement continues, and the right of the neighbors to walk through the property continues, even though there's a new owner. Because again, when you buy, you're not buying any more. Oh, we got a little bit of competition next door. There's a basketball team. I think that they must have won the game. I don't know. They're celebrating. But anyway, so that's kind of what's going on here. So here you have that case of this situation. So Avad Rav Yosef uvda b'tzrifut urbanei, and there was a situation with Rav Yosef where he allowed this water to run off the thatched roof type of operation. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba bar Avua. So Rav Nachman said in the name of Rabba bar Avua, the son of Avua, Hamaskir bayis lechavero, bevira gedola. So now comes my brother's case. Somebody rents an apartment to his friend, to his fellow, in a large building. Just unfold it, there you go. Yeah, no, hold it. Right, there you go. All right, so Linda owns an apartment building, and she rents Becky an apartment in the building. Okay, so what happens? She rents the apartment to Becky, and mishtamish b'zizeha u'b'kusoleha ad arba amos. So Becky is allowed to put up like little hooks or things protruding from the side of the wall, up to 4 amos from her doorway, if it's in a large building. Okay, and if she's on the top floor, she can even rest items on the top wall, on the top floor. If that's what they do in that. So again, it says b'makom shenahagu, in a place where that was customary. So whatever was the customary way to operate in that place, that was acceptable. But in a different situation where it's a smaller place, right? She couldn't use it. But so suppose if there is a nice garden in front of the building, or even in the back of the building. So this nice garden, she can't just be hanging all kinds of stuff over there. And if it's in the back of the house, even there she can't do it. Rav Amar Filu Ruchava Shachari Babatu. But Rav says that in the back of the house, even though there's a nice garden there, she could go ahead and hang her whatever she wants to hang over there outside of her door. So Amar Ravina, Hai Kashura de Metalalta, Ad Tlasin Yomin Lo Yemei Chazaka. So suppose this is the wall of my house, and along comes Ezra, and he leans like a wall, like a lean-to, against the side of the wall of my house, and he puts his sleeping bag under there, and he decides to hang out there, right? So what happens? So I've got, this is my wall. He put his lean-to there. He's living there. So ad flasin yomi lo chazaka. Within 30 days, if I tell him, Ezra, that's not working. You can't stay there. So he doesn't have the presumption that he's got a right to do it. Basa flasin yomi havachazaka. But 30 days pass and I didn't complain about it. Too bad on me now. He can stay there all he wants, because I let him live there for 30 days. I didn't protest, and so that's okay. So I guess like what's going on in Los Angeles today, right? People are camping out on the streets. So I don't know what you can do. You know, the Gemara might not let you kick them out. I don't know. But anyway,
Squatter rights.
What?
Squatter rights.
Squatter. There you go. Squatter's rights.
That's what Eitan keeps saying, but he is not speaking up. So.
Right. Squatter's rights. So now here's a good one. The sukkah the mitzvah so let's say what Ezra did is he built a sukkah. And he's only intending to be there how long? 7 days, right? Because in Israel it's only 7 days of sukkahs, right? Ad shiva yomin lo havi chazaka. Up to 7 days, it's not considered a presumption he's got a right to do it. Basically, we figure he's doing it just for the holiday. Vasa shiva yomin havi chazaka. But if it's more than 7 days and I don't complain about it, that sukkah can stay there. V'chavre betina alter havechazaka, and if he attaches it to the wall using some kind of cement, then right away, if I didn't complain about that from the beginning, then I'm sort of out of luck that he can keep his sukkah.
I don't like that rule.
You don't like that rule?
I don't like that rule. It's your wall.
Right.
And it's your prerogative to allow or disallow at any time.
At any time,
Yes.
okay?
I agree.
So I hear you, but the rabbis felt that if you were concerned about it, you would have made an issue of it. And since you didn't, he can presume that he can
What
stay
if you were
there.
out of town for a month?
Well, that's a different
Didn't
story.
know.
You
Different?
didn't know. You didn't know, right?
Okay.
So if you didn't know, you didn't know. But once you know, now it's up to you to decide what you're gonna do. You're gonna let him stay there, or you're gonna tell him, take your sleeping bag and take off. Okay, so next case, now getting back to privacy. Amar Abaye, Shnei batim b'shnei tzidei rishus harabim. So suppose you have two houses on either side of the street, right? So let's say we're on Livingston Road, and I build my house across the street from your house, and they have flat roofs, don't forget. They, not like our roofs are pitched roofs. They had flat roofs, and they used to use the roof. You know, they'd go up on the roof, and they would, whatever they would do up there, they would barbecue up there in the summertime, whatever it was. So that meant if they were gonna be up using the roof, so what is their concern now?
Someone's gonna fall.
You need a fence.
Someone's gonna fall, that's one thing, but also the concern is privacy, right? If I'm using that roof, I don't want you looking in and seeing what I'm doing up there. I have the right to privacy.
Are we going 40 or 50?
Pardon?
40 or 50?
40 or 50
Minutes.
minutes, 40. Okay, so we're coming close to the end of today's session, but, so the point is that you have a right to privacy. So suppose, here's what happens. Houses are built directly across the street from each other. Zeh oseh marka l'chatzi gago. So one neighbor builds his wall, he's supposed to build a wall on the roof, a parapet, whatever, half of the width of the roof. Okay? And zeh shelo keneged zeh, and uma'adiv. And what he has to do is he builds it, so let's say they're directly across the street from each other, and the houses are 40 feet wide. So he's got to start from, let's say, the north end, and he's got to go, let's say, 22 feet. And the other one starts from the south end, and he goes 22 feet. So there's an overlap in the middle. So each one has to cover half, because each one has a responsibility to provide privacy for his neighbor, but he doesn't have to do the whole
Say that
thing.
again, each one has a responsibility to provide
Privacy.
privacy
For his
from
neighbor.
or for? From his neighbor?
From and for.
Flip that and see if there's a picture.
Oh, right, so let's show you the picture. Thank you.
Never know.
Okay, so here are the two houses across the street from each other.
I don't have a responsibility to provide privacy for my neighbor.
Yes, you do.
Oh gosh, I don't believe this. You're gonna think I'm, argumentative.
No.
If they don't wanna see me, let them put up their own wall.
So,
And the same goes for
So
me.
they-
If I don't wanna see them, I'll put up my
right.
own wall.
So what the Gemara is saying, there is a concept called hezek re'iyah. It means damage caused by seeing, by overlooking, by looking at something. So if my wife is sunbathing on the roof, I don't want you looking. And it's up to
You can't dictate what people do with their eyes. You could build your own wall.
So I could build my own wall, but just as I have the, so here we're across the street from each other. So just as I want protection from you in a certain way, you want protection from me too. You want your privacy too.
So instead of building a full wall,
So instead of one of us,
building a full wall,
we each
has the
build
same-
half,
Okay.
and we overlap a little bit, right? Because otherwise you go
That
kind of
sounds
look
like a
around.
compromise.
What?
That sounds like
It's
a
a
compromise.
compromise, it's a compromise.
Alright.
So that's what happens, so one builds it this way, the other one builds it, and you see they're overlapping a little bit. Okay, and so so next week we're gonna continue with other cases of rooftops and walls and so on. And so I thank you, those of you who came out tonight on a cold night, and it's harder to come out on a night like this in Elizabeth than it is in Boca Raton. But
No,
we'll
it's not.
continue,
No, it's not.
God willing, next week.